I'm going to share with you a quote from ancient Rome that will change the way you look at the world forever. This quote, without context, just seems like a random line, but if you understand it, your entire life will change. It can be applied to relationships, to your work, to your understanding of the very workings of the world, and can improve your life immensely. Keep watching, and I'll explain. There's a scene in the late Roman Republic where the Stoic philosopher Cato the Younger finds himself at odds with his friend and famous orator Cicero. The issue is that Rome would outsource tax collection from the provinces it governed to tax collectors. Rome would give the contract to whoever bidded the highest. The collectors would go, fleece the provinces, and whatever they could get on top of their obligation to Rome, they kept. It was the surest way to get properly wealthy at that time. This year in question, though, on account of droughts and wars in all the provinces, the tax collectors not only wouldn't collect enough to make a profit, they would actually lose money if they had to give Rome what they agreed to. They wanted to renegotiate. Cicero understood the nuance of the situation and realized that if it fell apart, there would be steep consequences. You can't just have the taxes not collected from the provinces. The uncompromising Stoic philosopher Cato, however, was of the belief that a contract was a contract. Since the contract was signed, the discussion stopped there. In negotiations, Cato would filibuster the court for months, not letting a decision be reached, until in the end, the tax collectors grew frustrated and just walked away from the whole thing. These wealthy Romans turned their backs on the Senate and instead turned to Rome's wealthiest private citizens. This was just another straw on the hay bale that would eventually collapse the Republic. In a moment of frustration, Cicero wrote to a friend about his feelings for Cato. He said that he talks like he's living in Plato's Republic and not Romulus's shithole. This is a line that at first glance just seems humorous. A man letting off some steam about his frustrations with a friend. But I keep coming back to it as I realize it's the most profound line in history. For context of what this quote is, by the way, the Republic is the great work of the philosopher Plato that discusses what life would be like in a utopian republic. It discusses how the people would act in such a place, the way things would work, all that. Cato's talking and acting like he lives in that republic, but the reality is that he lives in Romulus's shithole. Romulus being the mythical founder and first king of Rome, with his shithole being this city-state, which grew unexpectedly into a world power with no real plan or grand design. It was a thing that worked, but not properly. It had a foundation, but it was built on sand. It was where if you wanted something done, you couldn't go by the book. It was messy, it was imperfect, but it worked, to some extent. Within this realm, if you're acting like you live in Plato's Republic, not much is going to happen. Compromises must be made, and the reality of the situation needs to be acknowledged. Now, why do I think this line is so profound? I think it's so deep because you live in Romulus's shithole. You have all these grand designs for the future and what life will look like when everything falls into place and is organized, but it will literally never happen. If you wait until things come together in a utopia, you're going to be waiting forever. You have to take action within the messy reality that you live in. I'd like to live in a world where I could trust my government to have my best interests in mind, and that we're all working on things, however imperfectly, for the good of all of us. But that's not the republic that I inhabit. In the business world, you used to be able to take people at their word and make deals on a handshake. But that is how business works in Plato's Republic. In reality, we need lawyers and contracts. The entire legal industry exists because we live in Romulus's shithole. You need to get it in writing because people don't act virtuously. To touch on things a little more specifically, in relationships, we want our partner to be romantic. We want them to be thoughtful. We want to feel heard and paid attention to. We don't appreciate when they're thoughtful, and romantic, and sweet because we're focused on all the times that they weren't those things. We want it to be perfect and stable at all times. We want it lovely forever. We suffer with the grass is always greener syndrome because we see that our relationship isn't the Plato's Republic that we envisioned. Then if someone promising comes along, we're willing to switch sides in search of the Republic, only to realize after the honeymoon phase that it's Romulus's shithole all the way down. Now how does this work in practice? Once we understand that we live in Romulus land, let's look at how we can thrive within it. And it pretty much comes down to the third agreement in Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The Four Agreements. Don't make assumptions. Don't assume that your partner will do what you want them to. That you shouldn't have to tell them what to do because they should know. People have different values that they developed in their cultures and families. What you see as wrong, they may not. So if you have an issue with something, communicate it. Don't assume that they know. And make sure you communicate in a real way, not dramatically like you're in a movie where you want them to submit to you. Don't live in this fantasy land of romance. Don't live in this world where you want your politicians to be pure. Remember that you live in a world where there are bad people out to get you. And also keep in mind that while you don't have it all together, everyone else doesn't either. Remember that when you run up against someone else's shamelessness, to ask yourself, is a world without shamelessness possible? No. Then don't ask the impossible. There have to be shameless people in the world. This is one of them. The same for someone vicious or untrustworthy, or with any other defect. Remembering that the whole class has to exist will make you more tolerant of its members. This is what Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself. You still have your virtues and your ethics, and you try to act through them, but you also must understand that people are people. Compromises must be made. You may very well get betrayed. Don't get bitter about it. Keep striving for that republic, but understand, without any malice, where it is that you really live.